So today we'll be talking to Phil Pettit. So come explore an opportunity at Cummins Inc. with Phil Pettit, EMEA Supply Chain Service Leader. Phil has been an active member in mobilizing the Cummins Veterans strategy and has played a pivotal role in launching their European Veterans Employee Resource Group. And I'll be moderating this. So let's bring Phil to our digital stage here. Phil, how you doing?
Hey, Hunter, I'm great. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. So where are you right now?
Oh, I'm actually situated in the UK.
You are? Okay. And where in the UK are you?
I guess for people that are not in the UK, I'm probably best to describe it as I'm about 2 hours north of London, about an hour north of Cambridge. So sort of in the middle of the UK. Okay,
great. And so maybe, we start a lot of these conversations. We like to kick it off, just get to know you a little bit. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about your own personal and your professional career journey, leading up to Cummins. How'd you get there? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I've been in the UK all my life. I left school at 16, which is the earliest you could probably leave a full-time education in the UK, at least when I was leaving school. And didn't go through the university route. I decided very early on in my education that I wanted to serve in the military. I say I wanted to serve in the military. What I wanted to really do was work on aircraft. And obviously at the time there was probably only one branch of the UK military that would afford me that opportunity, which was the Royal Air Force. So having left school at 16, I joined the Royal Air Force at the age of 17. Only because it took that long to join. And I'm going back without giving too much away to 1986. I then, and I worked on aeroplanes, which is what I wanted to do. I worked on engines. I had a natural bent to solve practical problems. I wanted to work with my hands. And if that got me close to aircraft, that's exactly what I wanted to do. I spent just short of 12 years in the Royal Air Force. And leaving in 1997 was not my idea. The world changed considerably, as some of the attendees may be aware, through the 80s and 90s with the end of the Cold War. I was in long enough to see the start and the end of the first Gulf War as well, and a lot changed in mainland Europe as the Cold War ended, and certainly for us in the UK as well. With the Good Friday Agreement and the agreement to achieve peace in Northern Ireland, which again for us in the UK was a big deal. The UK ended up with a military that was far bigger than it needed to have at the time. I guess history has taught us slightly differently since then. So I find myself needing to find a job. I wanted to build on my skills that the military had given me. I took the opportunity while serving to extend my education, was afforded the opportunity to go into higher education and took that opportunity with both hands. I was very fortunate to be able to progress my education as well as, and that put me in a position where I could find a pretty decent job when I left, and one that meant that I got security for myself and my family, more importantly than anything else. As an added bonus, I was able to move back to my hometown with the role that I secured leaving the force. And since then, which is 1997, I've been in a variety of roles across a couple of organizations. And I've been now with Cummins for 11 years, just over 11 years, in a variety of different roles, mainly focused around product, all of it focused around people, and a fair chunk of the responsibility focused around just making our lives easier and our customers' lives much better by doing what we do and doing it well. I find myself in a position now where not only am I able to lead an organization centered in the UK, but supporting our business in the Europe, Middle East and Africa, but I'm also able to work with my colleagues to ensure that we are really embracing the aspect of diversity, which is veterans, and bringing that to life, not just for us in this region, but across the world as well.
Fantastic. I'd love to hear a bit about Cummins as a company. I was doing some research today and I was like, oh, this is a global company that does all of these things, that touches my life directly, and I had no idea. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that, maybe educate the audience, as I've been getting a little education today. And also then maybe you can transition to a bit about the core values of the company as well. You talked about people being really important in your company.
Sure, absolutely. And just to make you aware, I've got a couple of colleagues that have joined me today who are both situated in North America. So if we do get to some more specific questions around that particular part of the world, and I guess more broadly our approach to diversity and inclusion, particularly with respect to disability and veterans, then I'll be bringing Nick Mudd, who's our Global Inclusion Leadership Council leader for veteran status in the organisation, and also Dennis Heathfield, who leads our disability and veterans inclusion activity as well for the company. So they're on the call with me, and as I said, I'll be bringing them in at various points along the next 45 minutes to help me make sure we've got some good answers to these terrific questions. So just to go back, so we've been around for over 100 years now. So an awful lot's happened in that time, as has happened around the world and has happened in the world. And not only have we been around for 100 years, we fully intend to be around for the next 100 years and beyond. We are rooted in manufacturing, specifically North America and diesel engine manufacture. We are the largest independent manufacturer of diesel engines in the world, which is something we're very proud about, and something that we don't take lightly. With that brings with it great responsibility, particularly in this I guess, current age of ensuring that we're protecting our climate and our environment for future generations. And we as a company see ourselves as being very much part of the solution to that, what is a worldwide problem. But we're not going to forget our heritage. We're not going to forget our roots. And we still do manufacture diesel engines around the world and supply those into a number of different applications. We also supply those diesel engines into our own products as well. So we do manufacture and supply gensets across a significant range of products, which cut across various different sorts of applications: data centers, standby power, marine power, both prime power and standby. So you're on board a ship, you've got the gensets that are powering the propellers that are driving the boat, but you've also got the gensets that keep the lights on. And that's really what we're all about in Cummins is powering the world and keeping the lights on wherever we're operating. We also have a very healthy and very broad range of components businesses where we manufacture and also sell external to our company a wide variety of complex components. After treatment systems, for example, would be one of those. More recently, we've started to diversify, and we're very much now looking towards the future, very much looking to invest in new technologies. And more recently have announced and our investment in hydrogen cells and hydrogen fuel technology, which we see as being a very integral and critical part of our product lineup going forward. And obviously a very important solution for some of the power challenges that the world will be experiencing in a very, in the not too distant future, actually, as we become a lot more environmentally aware of what we do as an organization and what our products do while they're being operated as well. We're a $20 billion company. We've got 58,000 employees or so spread around the world. We have a presence in pretty much every country you could think of. We certainly have a very strong presence on every continent in the world. And that's primarily driven by our manufacturing organization, but also our distribution business as well, which is the route to market that we use to sell our products worldwide. We are really focused, as I've mentioned already, about applying our expertise, our talent in creating power solutions that people depend on. They really do keep the lights on. They give people their days and their nights. They give them their health. They give them their wealth. And pretty much everywhere in the world, you're going to find a Cummins product that's behind all of that. But we want to make the world a more prosperous place to live in as well. And that's not just about us making money. It's about giving back to the community. It's about making sure that we support those communities in resolving significant challenges, not just in terms of power, but overall the environment and the impact that we have as an organization in those communities, and making sure that our employees have the opportunity to spend time in the communities that they live and work in, and making them a much more prosperous place for everybody to live in. Our whole organisation is founded on our core values, as I know a lot of organisations are. In particular, and I think really relevant for this discussion today, integrity is at the heart of everything that we do. It's about doing what we say we're going to do and doing things right, not just every now and again, but every time we do it. We strongly value diversity and inclusion. More so the inclusion. Diversity has always been something that Cummins has valued, going back to the very beginning of the company over 100 years ago. Diversity has been very much something that's driven our organisation. More recently, though, we've recognised that it's not just about the diversity we have in our workforce, it's what we do with it. And that's where the inclusion piece comes into play. It's about valuing and including our differences in the key decisions that we make as an organisation, because that's where we feel our competitive advantage comes from, that inclusion piece. We care hugely about our people. We care hugely about our communities, our customers, our suppliers. We have very key and critical partnerships with customers and suppliers around the world. But all of that means nothing if we don't care for ourselves and care for our employees and their families. And that's not just about checking in every now and again with somebody. It's about being empathetic. It's about caring about people's well-being, not just our own, but the well-being of the teams that we lead, the teams that we work with, the people that we live with, the people that we share our communities with. It's a very far-reaching value, and one that is certainly for me a standout in this organisation. Excellence is all about driving superior results. It's about a focus on quality. It's again supported by our value of integrity, doing the right thing, and always doing the right thing, and making sure that quality is at the heart of everything that we do. And then teamwork, making sure that we're collaborating not just with each other, but across teams, functions, businesses, and borders around the world, because again, we are a global organization that has businesses present in, as I said, pretty much every country in the world that you could think of, and they all are connected. They're connected by our core values, our products, our people, and we wouldn't be able to do any of that if it wasn't for the fact that we could work effectively as teams. Hopefully that gives you a bit more of an insight, Hunter.
It certainly does. It certainly does. And I'm sure a lot of insights are popping up for the audience watching today. And I'd love to encourage all of you, if you have any questions, this is an open format. You can drop them in the chat. They'll be relayed to me and I can ask them here. Also, a friendly reminder that Cummins will be a part of our job fair. So if you want to get an early jump on some of those questions too, you can ask them here. So Phil, as I was wondering if you could speak about, as a veteran yourself, you mentioned some of your service time. Thank you for your service, by the way. And as a veteran yourself, can you share about what are some of the advantages for a company, or maybe even specifically Cummins as a company, to open the doors and to seek out and make it a priority to hire veterans?
Yeah, that's a great question, Hunter. And I think it's important to note that certainly from my experience, and I know the experience of many of my colleagues, veterans and non, that sometimes these advantages are not always obvious. They're not always measurable. They're not always visible. And certainly where you've got a company that already has veterans in its organisation, as we do, I think it really does ensure that the rest of our organisation, those key decisions are taken knowing that there is value in bringing people from that dimension of diversity into our organisation, not just for me, not just for my team, but for the organisation as a whole, and again, the communities that we support and the customers that we deliver to. If I think about some of those things, I'm talking about things like self-discipline. Well, that's an obvious thing to say, but there's a level of self-discipline that you get in a veteran that you probably wouldn't get to that degree of detail in somebody that you're hiring from not just another company, but maybe fresh out of college, fresh out of school. That core value of self-discipline is ingrained and embedded within every veteran, regardless of length of service. If they've managed to get through their basic training, which in some, depending on which force you've joined and where you are in the world, could be anything from weeks to months to years, they're going to have self-discipline writ large across everything that they do. The ability to get done what they're asked to get done, the ability to be minimally supervised to do a good job, knowing that they will deliver a good job at the end of the day is really, really important. And it helps everybody because you know that you've got that from the get-go. Planning and organising is something that the military does day in, day out. They do it 9 times out of 10 without thinking. In an organisation like ours, which is complex, it's big, it's challenging by just definition of the geographic spread of our organisation and the diversity of what we do. Being able to plan and organise in that dynamic environment is critical for us to be able to achieve every day, every week, month, year what we set out to do. And people that come from the military have that again ingrained in them from the get-go. Being able to lead, being able to strategize in very challenging circumstances, not just thinking about the future, but at the same time being able to execute operationally. All those things in parallel, again, tend to be things that our veteran colleagues have had experience of. And we all know, we've all seen it real time around the world, some of the challenges that our military have to cope with. And you've got to be pretty good at leading, which is a prerequisite of deploying a military force. Is you've got leaders built within that organisation, and every member of that force is a leader. Yes, they have their own leaders, but they're expected to lead their own work, their own teams, and deliver seamlessly operationally as well in very challenging, very pressurised, very stressful circumstances. That builds into the fact that we are used in the military to working in very effective teams, high performing teams in very high pressure environments and very dynamic environments as well. The ability of veterans to adapt to change in an environment, in a world that is changing dynamically, as we've seen in the last few weeks, even with the COP summit that's been happening here in the UK. Things are going to change quite quickly over the next few years, and we need people that embrace that change, that respond to that change in a very positive way. And we believe that veterans inherently within them have the ability to adapt, the ability to embrace and champion change, really. And we need that in our organisation. And I think a lot of companies will be looking to that as we move towards delivering on some of our environmental and climate related initiatives going forward. You can't put many measures on a lot of that stuff, but they do strongly correlate to our core values. Every one of those is very much aligned, and always will be, to be fair. I found my transition into the Cummins organisation to be very straightforward, mainly because my core values that I got from my career in the military were very much aligned to what the company expected of me as an employee. And I'm not saying that this is an exhaustive list. It's not. There are many more skills and experiences, because it's not just about the skills that veterans bring to the organisation, it's the diverse range of experiences that they bring with them as well. And we embrace that, and we include that in the makeup of our company, and it's important to us that we do, because it's reflective of the communities that we support and the communities from which our employees are drawn from. Yeah,
I love. We were talking here a lot about. I'm hearing from you the core values and the integrity. Integrity is a big core value, and teamwork and skills, including leading and adapting and planning and organizing. All of these things that can transition from the experience that these veterans like yourself have had into this workforce. Could you speak to how this might shape the culture at Cummins? So we're talking about, okay, so we have these skills, we have that I can bring to the table. Here's the core values of the company. So what does the culture look like? Maybe can talk a little bit about your day-to-day, which I'm sure has changed over the past year. But if you could speak maybe about the culture that you've experienced over the past 11 years at the company.
Yeah, and again, that's a great question. And I think it's very difficult to articulate what that experience has been like. And I may sort of reach out to Nick, my colleague in North America, to help me out on this one a little bit, because he's had a similar experience to myself in joining the company and integrating into the organization. But I think from my perspective, certainly what I'd say is that it was a very easy transition, and not so much because of anything I did, but because of what the company did. the company wanted to hear about my experience. They wanted to understand what skills I had, so that it could then work with me to understand what are my development needs then, because I don't have all the answers. Nobody ever does have, but there's certainly opportunity there, and to build on skills and experiences I already had. It's important that when you're creating somebody's development plan, regardless of what level they've entered the organization, that you know where you're starting from. So there was very much from the get-go for me, there was very much an inquiry from the company about, so tell us about your experiences, what skills you think you're bringing to the organization, which sounds like a bit of a cliche thing to say, but it was so important that that was an upfront conversation, because straight away I felt like, oh, hang on a minute, I'm working for a company here who's actually interested. You know, they're interested in what I'm bringing to the role, what I'm bringing to the company, what I'm bringing to the team. But at the same time, I'm getting something back because they're already talking to me about my development needs and what they can offer to me as a new employee in the organization going forward. Through the course of my 11 years, of course, with the company, that's changed a little bit as I've become more experienced in the organization. And I don't think I would have been involved in trying to create this veterans organization within Cummins if it wasn't for the fact that the company supports me in doing that. And all of my colleagues in the company are a testament to that. You know, we are given the support, the encouragement, the resources, the engagement, the leadership to be able to value this dimension of diversity. And it's not something that we're doing in a sort of skunk works in the UK or in Europe. It's something that we've done collectively across our global organization, and something that the Cummins leadership team is very much invested in. Nick, I don't know if you can hear that, but I don't know if you want to add any more to what I've just said.
Thanks, Phil. Some of the things that I would add is I joined maybe about the same time as you, Phil. Probably one of the unique experiences I had was I joined, and then about my 1 year mark, I was recalled to active duty back in the military, right? And I think the experience that I had with that really says a lot about the things you were talking about, right? How the interest in me when I joined was, you know, focused on me, my development, how we can take the strengths that I bring and use that to contribute to the strengths of the organization and make the organization better, right? So very familiar feel to what I'd seen in the Army, you know, in my time there. And, you know, one of the other similarities that I felt was with my leaders. You know, the very first thing when I came in and, you know, shared with my leaders that I had been recalled to active duty and was going to be leaving in a month. You know, that they weren't upset. They weren't angry. Their first question was about, Nick, how's your family doing with this? So it's that culture of caring that the company brings that you know, really kind of spoke just tons to me, more than, you know, anything that we could put on a piece of paper or put up on a website, right? So, and I think that speaks really broadly to the culture at Cummins itself, is that it's really focused on doing the right thing, on the integrity, on taking care of the people. So that's, you know, that's kind of what I would add there, Phil. Of course, you know, there's always the things about how do we become technically proficient in our jobs, right? How do we get better so that we're ready to take on kind of that next level challenge in our career and move to that next position? There's all of those things, just like it was in the military, where you know, you've got people helping you along and giving you advice and mentorship there. But the biggest part that I saw kind of was the culture of caring and support.
Great, thanks, Nick.
Hey,
Hunter,
Phil,
does that answer your
Hunter,
question?
could I just jump in here with an observation from the perspective of someone who is not a veteran, but I've been at Cummins for 27 years. And as Phil mentioned, I have the privilege of leading our disability and our veterans inclusion initiatives. And the one thing that Phil and Nick failed to mention, partly because they're too humble, that I've observed, that I have really come to appreciate from the veterans that work in our organization is their ability, their vision, to be able to commit to something bigger than themselves. And in an environment as collaborative as ours, it's so important to have people on the team that are saying, hey, this isn't all about me, it's about us. And I see that day in and day out from the people I'm privileged to work with that come to us with military service.
Thanks, Dennis. Hunter, does that answer your question?
Absolutely, yeah.
Perfect.
And thank you for, Nicholas, your insight on that, and thank you for your service as well. Phil, you mentioned how you personally have been an active member with Cummins in expanding the draw in of bringing in more veterans. If you could speak a little bit about that process, what that's been like when you maybe proposed that idea and now years later being actively involved in that. And if following up with that, if you could elaborate perhaps on some of the resources that are allocated towards hiring and recruiting veterans.
Yeah, sure. So again, I'm going to talk primarily about what we've been doing in this part of the world, in Europe, and certainly in the UK, and then I'll ask Nick to chip in with the perspective on how that's panned out in North America. I think it's important again to recognise that we value all dimensions of diversity, and our recruitment policies and practices try and ensure that we are actively recruiting from candidates and pools of candidates that reflect not just our communities, but also that range of diversity that we're really focused on building out in our organisation. And veteran status is just one of them. But it's one that's had more attention over the last couple of years because of Dennis's leadership and Nick's support and the work that we've been doing in the region to build out our approach to veteran status as a dimension of diversity to us. And it was really tapping into some of the things certainly in the UK that we were already doing. For a long time in the UK, we've had a very good working relationship with an organisation called the Careers Transition Partnership. They basically sit between industry and the government, and they support veterans as they exit their service in finding them work, finding them experience, and connecting really good candidates with really good organisations and really good roles. We were already doing that, but we've shone a bit of a light on that process and that structure in recent years, and we've started to do a lot more to support and that partnership, but also to ensure that our organisation is aware that is a route through which we can access some pretty good talent, particularly with respect to the veterans dimension of diversity. But we're not naive enough to expect that veterans just want to work for Cummins, right? Because there are a huge number of companies that are all singing off the same sheet that we are. The veterans, with all the skills and experience they bring, offer a huge benefit to any organisation. The important thing for us, if we get somebody at the end of the process, then that's great for us and hopefully great for the employee. But actually, if we can get a veteran into a job, that's what we're about. We want these men and women who've served their country for however long they've been in that role to be able to find future employment that is right for them, right for their families, and right for the organisation that takes them in. So that's really where we're focusing our efforts and have focused our efforts in the UK. We do post all of our roles, not just in the UK, but around the world on our website. So if we're recruiting externally, anybody in the world can access our website and find those roles. I guess from now, and it has been the case for the last couple of weeks, all of our roles globally are posted through Power to Fly. So you can find every single Cummins role that's currently vacant in our organisation worldwide through the Power to Fly website. And of course, we occasionally are led to advertise through LinkedIn and other social media platforms. It's not just about raising awareness of roles, it's also about raising brand awareness for the Cummins organisation around the world. The talent acquisition team, who are focused on acquiring talent for the organisation, do lean on us as a veterans resource group heavily to ensure that we're able to help in supporting the translation of CVs, of job applications from veterans into words and terms that maybe we would understand at Cummins. So we're making a more effective, hopefully a more efficient process for veterans applications to be considered and processed through our organisation by applying the skills and experiences that we've got in Cummins today. And we are very keen to work with veterans and organisations that support veterans in understanding more about the transferable skills that that pool of candidates will offer and can offer to us as an organisation. So a lot has been going on. A lot will continue to go on as we build out some of our critical relationships with some of these veterans supportive organisations, particularly in the UK and Europe. But Nick, I'm just going to hand it over to you and ask if you wouldn't mind just giving an insight into some of the initiatives that we've had going in the US with respect to hiring and recruiting veterans.
Sure, Phil. You talked about a lot of different things, and in terms of the talent acquisition process, I'd say there's a lot of similarities across across different countries across the world, right? So we focus on we do some job fairs, some military focused job fairs that we attend. There's some more kind of direct recruiting to some of the key military installations. Then there's also some government programs. One's called Skill Bridge that we work with to try and bring veteran talent into the company. So those are some of the things that we do, kind of externally facing, trying to attract the right kind of talent there. There's also another aspect of it that I wanted to touch on, and that's really kind of educating the hiring managers inside the company too, right? At the senior leader level, right? We've just got tons of support to say, yes, military veterans, we want more. But really where the rubber meets the road is at the hiring manager level. There's a great quote from one of the former US presidents, and I won't claim to get it word for word, but what he says is that nobody ever sits around a conference room saying, yeah, I need a sniper. I need a military sniper for this job, right? But what they say, and so there's that translation piece, right? So lots of people sit around and say, I need somebody disciplined. I need somebody process oriented. I need someone dedicated to a mission bigger than themselves. When you start outlining those kind of qualities, right, which are some of the key qualities of someone in a military role, whether it's a sniper or whether there's a lot of other roles there too. But you see the point, right? Part of where our employee resource groups help is we help on that internal side to try and make sure that all the hiring managers out there kind of have that understanding of what are those really key things that military veterans bring to the table that might be a little bit different than the average person off the street. So that's where we spend some of our time. Is you mentioned some of the translating of resumes, but it's also, right, creating the pull with the hiring managers to say, I need a military veteran in this role. So that's I guess what I would add, that would be maybe a little different than what you shared. And it's not to say that doesn't happen across the company. It's more just to say that those were things that you didn't mention as well.
Thanks, Nick. I think it's fair to say, Hunter, that we're all driven by the same intent. It's just that we tend to execute depending on what's required in any particular region or any particular country that we're present in, as you'd expect with any global company, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I love, Nick, too, that I'm hearing earlier you were talking about this culture of caring, with your employers that were checking in with you and seeing how your family is doing. And now in a similar vein, there's this continued education within the program, within the company, to expand this knowledge and be open to new ideas and understanding, someone with a military background that I I just might have dismissed before. Oh, this person is diligent. This person is responsible. This person is on time. These are the things that we understand. And this requires, us to maybe continue to learn within the company. So it's great to hear that the company is doing that. I have a few questions coming in from the audience, which is fantastic. And on a related note, someone asks, how are veteran needs different from the other communities in the workforce, if at all?
Oh, that's a good question. Are they different? Are they more visible? I don't know if I'm perfectly honest. I think some of the examples that I've got kicking around in my mind, just listening to that question, would be the transition from military to civilian work is significant, regardless of how long your service has been and what you've experienced. It's going to be a big change, and that's change for the individual as well as a change that is a function really of the company and the role that you're moving into. And very often you find that veterans just want reassurance that they're doing the right thing. That remember, they're coming out of an environment where it's very disciplined. It's very obvious, very, very obvious when they're doing the wrong thing. Not always obvious when they're doing the right thing, as long as they're not doing the wrong thing, what that would be defined as. In industry and in non-military type of roles, in my experience at least, it's not always as obvious as that. So very often, and I've had it with people I've worked with that are veterans, they need reassurance because there is a lot of uncertainty in what we do as an organisation, and I think everybody's experienced that over the last 18 months or so through the pandemic. So it's really put that under the microscope, and sometimes that's a very strange and very insecure place for a veteran to be because they're not used to that. On the flip side, obviously, we talked about the ability to plan and organize and adapt to change. All of that goes on without them necessarily thinking about it. But when it's in a non-familiar environment, then I think sometimes, and this goes back to the caring aspect, sometimes we just need to check in more often with those guys and girls to make sure that they understand that this is a situation where it is a bit more dynamic and maybe there is a lot of uncertainty, but we know they've got the mindset and the attitude to get the job done and get it done in the most effective way. Sometimes they need to hear that. I think it shouldn't be underestimated, particularly over the last sort of 20, 30 years, that a lot of veterans have been through some pretty significant life-changing experiences. And again, a lot of that is reflected in hidden disability. It's not always an obvious disability. We know about those because everybody can see them. But some of the challenges that our veterans have in leaving the service to look for work elsewhere is they have got these unseen disabilities. They've been through these sometimes life-changing and horrific experiences, which will never leave them, often than not. So it's important that we reflect on that, what that means for that individual, what it means for us as an organisation, and again, bringing out the caring aspect, just making sure that we do as much as we can to ensure their transition is as easy on them as it should be for us, but at the same time focused on getting the job done, which is why they've joined the company and taken that role on. Nick, Dennis, I don't know if you wanted to add anything else.
I can add just quickly from my experience with the transition, military to civilian. The one thing that I noticed, right, is I came equipped with a lot of skills. What I didn't come equipped with was experience with the company, right? I was new to the company. So in terms of kind of different needs there, I think the military veterans will come, kind of at an advanced level with a lot of skills, but they'll also come kind of at that novice level with industry type experience, right? Because they've been in the military, which is, somewhat of a unique environment. So that I think maybe is a little bit different than what others would come to the company having. So that they maybe need some more mentorship there, because you give them that mentorship and boom, it's going to be pretty quickly that they pick it up and move along. But sometimes there'll just be questions about, well, why is this working this way? What's happening here? Things like that. That experience that they don't necessarily have yet in that corporate or civilian setting.
Yeah. Thanks, Nick.
just real quickly, the other thing I would add is beyond that initial job, that initial transition period. Again, because in many cases veterans haven't been exposed to a corporate environment, and just thinking about career development and how do you actually, build a career path that lets you continue to, progress in the organization and take you in the direction of achieving what you aspire to achieve. And so I think, this is an area of opportunity for us. When we look at our attrition, we see in general doing a decent job of getting veterans in the door, and then first couple of jobs, and then we may have people falling out of the organization, after a move or two, and we know that part of that is veterans needing more coaching, more mentoring in terms of career development and career planning.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you, Dennis. Well, we have just we're going to get cut off right at quarter till. I have no control over this. The robots are going to kick us out, y'all. So there's more questions in the chat here. I'm afraid we won't get to all of them. In the last couple minutes here, Dennis and Phil and Nicholas, if there's anything you'd like to share about, you're going to be part of the job fair coming up, and I'm sure our audience is going to have a lot of more questions. Is there ways they can reach out to you? How would you like them to reach out to you? And if there's any advice maybe you can give them going into as they're going to your job fair, as well as, putting their best foot forward for future work opportunities.
Sure. And I'm hopeful that we're going to get a lot of interest at that job fair later in the week. I think primarily don't assume anything. Ask. We've got people that are able to answer questions directly, and if we're not able to, we will certainly get those questions. And so any question, any interest is more than welcome in that job fair. I guess in terms of more generally, we do have a presence and a pretty proactive one, is to be fair, from the talent acquisition team on social media and LinkedIn. I wouldn't describe LinkedIn necessarily as social media, but we are very heavily present in LinkedIn as well as having a very up-to-date and very dynamic website, which again contains an awful lot of information about our company, what drives us, what products we manufacture and supply, as well as the presence we have around the world and our core values and our approach to diversity and inclusion in the organization. So anything and everything you would ever want to know about Cummins, you can find in that website somewhere. If that's not the case, and I'll be surprised if it's not, then at the moment at least we're more than welcome to accept any questions direct to Bongani, whose email address I think is going to be supplied on the day of that career fair, so people can actually email us through Bongani's email address, company email address, and those questions will then get placed to the right people in our organisation to all follow up and get a response. Personally, I'm on LinkedIn. Anybody wants to connect with me, feel free to do so, and I'm more than happy to field questions direct through the LinkedIn platform. And obviously, I will defer to colleagues in the organisation if there's anything there that I'm not familiar with or confident in answering. So I'd offer that out to anybody that's listening today ahead of the career fair on Thursday.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, that's all the time we have for this. Please do join us in the job fair on Thursday. Dennis, Nicholas, Phil, thank you so much for your time, for your service, and for your insight. I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Good job. Thanks, Hunter. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.